Okay, good morning, everybody. It's what day is it? It's Tuesday, the 25th of January, and welcome to another webinar session hosted by Risual Limited. Today's session, if my slides work, there we go, is all about leading a secure non-for-profit organisation and thinking about how we can, help non-for-profits in particular to really establish that sort of secure IT enterprise and think about things like cybersecurity and hopefully touch on some points that are really going to be useful for you. So a bit of an agenda, as I say, we're going to do a quick introduction to Risual. So if you haven't worked with us before, hopefully you'll find out what it is, who we are, what it is we do, and hopefully how we can help you. If you are an existing customer, thank you for working with us, and hopefully there's much more work we can do with you. And again, hopefully this session will maybe plant some ideas as to other areas that maybe we haven't worked with you on in the past. We'll go through some common security challenges that we see both working across all sectors as Risual do, but also I'll try to pinpoint some that we have identified alongside Microsoft, of course, around security challenges in this sort of non-for-profit sector. We'll go through how to build that organization, again, using Microsoft services. So what I will say is, and I'll state this right now, obviously, is that this is very much some of the slides here, or in fact, a lot of the slides have been provided by Microsoft. Thank you to Microsoft for doing that. Obviously, we are a Microsoft house, which I'll go into in a second. So this is very much about how you can build that secure organization by using Microsoft services. Then I'll go into how we can help, and it wouldn't be a webinar these days without an offer at the end. So we've got an offer for you to entice you to hopefully work with us as well. So look out for that as we get towards the end. Quick hello from me. My name's Ian Stretton. I am the Cloud Transformation Director here at Risual. I've been at Risual for many years now, so this is my 11th year. I've been in the industry for 20 something years, so I've been around and worked in systems integrators for pretty much all my career. So in theory, I know what I'm talking about, or at least I think I do. So who are Risual? So we are Microsoft experts, as I said. We really do focus in on the Microsoft stack, and that's around the kind of three main clouds, so or areas these days. So it's Azure, Modern Work, which obviously covers things like Windows 11, Windows 10, the management of those solutions, so things like Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager and the on-premise versions of those as well, and then Dynamics. And of course, we come from that background. We've been around since 2005, so this is our 16th, 17th year. So we have always traditionally done on-premises infrastructure back in the day, and as the clouds have developed, we also too have developed, and with cloud first as our sort of strategy. We're a UK-based organisation, so our head offices are in Staffordshire, but our consultants and our members of staff are actually all around the UK. And of course, at the moment, with the situation with the pandemic, everybody's generally working from home as well to help our customers and clients. We aim to transform the workplace through the introduction and adoption of strategic management Microsoft technology. So basically, because we know the Microsoft stack and we know the licensing and the features that are part of the Microsoft technology areas, what we try to do is to help you to make the most of either what you've already got licensed and you weren't aware of it, and make the most of that, especially in the non-for-profit area, and also to really make sure that you're making the most out of it, but making the most out of the security side of things as well, of course, is on everybody's lips at the moment. So obviously, the products themselves come with lots of security built in, and not everybody is using them to their full extent. So we try to highlight that and make sure that you know how to use them. In terms of accreditations, we've got lots, as you can see across the bottom, and also on point sort of 3 on the left. So we've got ISO standards, with cybersecurity and Cyber Essentials Plus ourselves. We are part of the CISP program, which is the National Cyber Centre Security program. And I think I've got a slide on this coming up as well, but I'll mention it anyway. We're also recently became a member of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association as well. So that's a group of partners and Microsoft that kind of come together as a forum to think about and work on ideas around security, cyber security, sorry, and how we can, re-educate everybody, and how we can make sure that everybody's making the most of the services and continue to develop services, of course, and tools and products. We're available. If you're not working with us, we are available to be worked, or you can raise orders with us if you like through different means, either directly with us, of course, or we are on a number of frameworks. So things like G-Cloud 12, the DOS Digital Outcomes Framework, Bloom, North of England. So if you'd like to purchase through a particular framework, we've got a number of them. We think we've got the kind of top ones there for most people to be able to purchase through. Move on to the next slide. So like I said, in terms of our kind of main go-to-market propositions, we've got cloud transformation, which is kind of the area that I look after, which is very much focused on Azure and modern work. And say if it's not Azure, it's on premises, that's fine as well. So data center services internally, we also can help with those. And then we've got business and digital transformation, and those sort of two areas, there's a little crossover, I suppose, between the two, but essentially you've got business transformation, which is kind of looking at how we can take your maybe manual processes at the moment and digitize them. That's business transformation. How we can digitize them, how we can maybe make your interface into your clients more digital experience, which is again what everybody is doing these days. And then your digital transformation is thinking about data that you have in your organization. How can you enhance that and use more of it? You do analytical reviews of that data to help either yourselves forecast and predict and make better decisions on the future, or you could even say, right, we've got some really useful data here that could be passed on to other organizations and partners and help them to make better decisions as well. So again, that's our digital sort of transformation area. Main areas of risual is our advisory. So that's where we come in and do consulting on particular Microsoft products. And that's our consultancy and advisory services, with either planning for strategic kind of events and strategic programs of work, or our consultancy is probably a little bit more tactical, if you like. It's more productized and product focused, where we can come in and help on particular areas of the stack. We've then got a services function as well. So that's our risual managed services. So that's where we can support your environments, Microsoft environments in particular, either as a fully managed service or as a kind of call-off support contract. We've got a skills function, so we can help to train either both your end users or your IT function as well. And that's obviously to raise the digital skills and the digital awareness as to, again, how you can use more of the technology. That I won't go into it in too much detail now, but we also do management of apprenticeships as well. So we work with a lot of the local enterprise partnerships around the UK and help to basically bridge the gap between sort of college and university potentially, and going into work. And we can manage the apprenticeship programs. We do manage the apprenticeship programs for a number of our customers on their behalf as well. And then our final area is our solutions function, which is where we can provide custom code. We can develop applications and solutions, and we also do a data integration and business integration as well. So helping to basically allow systems to communicate with each other through things like programming calls, API calls, and things like that, or doing that through internet connectivity and connecting systems and working out how we do that in a secure fashion and transferring data that is well managed. So that's kind of what we do. Security is in our DNA. So obviously this is a security session. So I've kind of touched on this before, but we have a number of accreditations from Microsoft. We're a gold partner in all of the, let me get me a little pointer. So we've got a number of accreditations around here, which is the traditional way, and these accreditations have been around for a while. Something that's been coming about more recently is Microsoft have introduced an advanced specialization program, again in a number of areas. And as you can see, we've got up to 9 now. We're going even more, so we're going to get even more. These are kind of taking and building on top of the gold accreditations that we used to have, and they are sort of an even more advanced audited facility now, where we get Microsoft in to check that we actually have the skills to do these, and we have got evidence that we've done this with customers as well, so not just taking exams. Not that I'm dumbing those down, by the way. We're also an Azure Expert MSP, so if anybody's thinking about migrating, moving to Azure or innovating on Azure services, then we have expert skills in that area. Again, takes the advanced specializations and the gold accreditations again even to another level again. So have a look at that, see what that means on the Microsoft site. We are one of those, of course. And I touched on before, we are part of the Intelligent Security Organization as well. Okay, so as we go through today's session, when we probably get into the meat of things, we will have a chance, hopefully at the end, to do some questions and answers. This is a live meeting, so unfortunately I can't allow you to verbally ask a question, but if you do have one, please do. You should find that there's a live Q&A sort of banner down the right-hand side of your screen or somewhere on your screen. You should be able to submit a question through to the live Q&A. And I've got some colleagues on the call with me who are moderating those questions as they come through. And those that are appropriate, obviously, we'll get those published at the end, and I'll try to look to answer as many of them as I can. And obviously, if we can't answer the questions in particular, either because it's a sensitive data or we just run out of time, then we will obviously take your questions and respond to you directly after the webinar as well. So please do, as I go through this, if you think of a question, please do post that through, and we'll do what we can to get it answered. So into the meat of the session then, really. So when we're thinking about sort of cyber security, and when we've been working with our clients, we tend to find that there's a number of kind of key areas and key pains that kind of keep coming up and bubbling up that everybody has. So just to run through some of these, and hopefully they will ring true with yourselves as well. So how do we protect our reputation? So we see this, and we've seen this in the media fairly often. The famous ones of people like leaving laptops on trains and data on trains and things like that. I think it goes beyond that now, obviously, where we've had people that have hacked into organizations and taken data out from contact details and sensitive information from quite major organizations as well. And obviously that gets out to the media. Now, I think when that sort of thing happens, and especially for somebody like a non-for-profit, like the people listening on this call, that reputational damage can have quite maybe not an initial effect, but maybe over time can have a long-term effect. So if your reputation's damaged as being an untrustworthy organization, or if I'm donating to that organization to help them to do something, well, they're going to keep sensitive data about me. So how much I invested or how much I donated, what my contact details are, and I don't want that data getting out. So I'm not going to work with them again, and therefore, obviously, your reputation gets damaged as not being able to hold sensitive information. And therefore people might not want to work with you again moving forward. So this is absolutely something that, again, outside of non-for-profit is a major worry. But I think it's, from everything I've read, actually, this is kind of one of the core ones for non-for-profit organizations. We all know, of course, that with the pandemic going on there's lots more people working from home, working remotely. How can we support that? And I think, we've had it now for a couple of years. I'm hoping most of you that are listening again today have got some strategies or some things in place now, but is it as good as it could be? Are you confident that, somebody working from home with a laptop, that their Wi-Fi is secure, or that the data that they're connecting to and the method that they're gathering that data back to store on their local devices, is that secure? Is it okay? Is it something that anybody could hack into and have a look at? So clearly that's a major concern these days. If there is a compliancy regulation, so I touched on the fact that risual have got a few, like things like Cyber Essentials, etc. If there are accreditations and compliancy that your organization need to achieve, how are you achieving that, and how will you achieve that? How do you prove that you've got certain things in place to be able to achieve those accreditations? So that's, again, obviously a big concern. And how much is enough? So again, this is always one of those ones that's always a difficult question to answer, especially these days. Is, you know, for those people who are maybe looking after IT, and you're going to your board of directors or your board of trustees saying, I need more information. I need more products. I need more skills. I need to spend more money to protect us. And of course, the answer that always comes back with, well, how much do you need? Well, it's never enough, right? Because I think with security and the threats and the cyber risks that we have, it's you can't stop everything, because the cyber risks are changing minute by minute. In fact, not just day by day, they're changing all the time. So it's about how you can protect yourselves as best as you can at the time that you can. And I think it's an organizational change as well, and it's a sort of mindset change at that level to say, well, this is something we've almost got to not write off, but we've also got to include in our budgeting for future years, is that we need to continually spend to make sure that our organization continues to be cyber secure, or that the security is considered as part of, as we make our budgets moving forward. I've just seen a question that's been posted. I'll answer that really quickly. Is the session being recorded and will it be shared later? Yes, it is being recorded, and yes, it will be shared later through risual different channels. We've got a few different ways that we release it, through Twitter and YouTube channel as well, and through our website. So yes, we'll absolutely get this released out, so you can watch it back as well, and you can share it with your colleagues, of course, as well. Moving on to non-profit sector challenges in particular. So we think that, you know, again, some of this come from Microsoft studies. So we found that non-for-profits are generally the most common targets of national state actors. So what we tend to find is, or I think Microsoft have found in particular, is that, you know, charities and non-for-profit who again are keeping sensitive data of the trustees, of the donations, of the people who they're working with, they're keeping that sensitive data, and generally it's been quite, for want of a better word, easy pickings, because again, you know, what you're focused in on is helping the doing the work that you're there to do, right, as part of the charity. That's really the mainstay. There hasn't been as much consideration around the IT or the security of that IT, because it's more been about doing the job the charity or the trust or the non-for-profit is there to do. And I think, therefore, as I say, actors and cyber hackers I've seen the non-profit sector as quite an easy way to get that sensitive data and that sensitive information, and then obviously carry on and do something else more damaging with it. Or we've also seen things like ransomware as well, saying, look, we've got your data, you know, we expect payments, or you know, we'll release, you know, reputational damage on you as well. So it's things like that. We absolutely see that. We generally see a lack of funding again in this particular sector for IT, and IT generally, not just security, but IT generally as well. There's always competing priorities, as I say, as I kind of touched on there, that the main priority of your organization is to do the good work that it's there to do, not necessarily to think about how am I protecting my IT. And because of that, there's generally the lack of executive buy-in, or a lack of organizational understanding that, yes, you know, actually, if we didn't have IT, there's things that we would do on a day-to-day basis that we can't do. So actually, you know, executive buy-in is generally key as well. Weak overall IT infrastructure. So sometimes it's been set up, and it's been maybe set up quickly, should we say, to kind of get to a position where you can start to work and trade. So maybe it's been put in to do a job rather than thinking about the longer term future of the security of the solutions. So, looking back at it and thinking how can that be improved is absolutely something that's worth doing. Lack of knowledge, again, understanding of the recent advancements in cloud is always, again, something that you need to keep. You need to spend time and actually spend money to keep up to speed and up to date with what's going on and how you can improve your own organizations. And again, I think with competing priorities going back, sometimes the focus is elsewhere within the organization, but spending time and having somebody, if I think about, a private sector organization that is, trades online, that's absolutely a key thing for them. Well, they're going to invest in individuals to really focus in to make sure that solution stays up and running, or they'll lose money. Now, that might not be the same, if you like, for some of the non-for-profit sector, right? So it's making sure that somebody is allocated to continually learn and improve the knowledge. And it's obviously generally or across the sector, there's a large volunteer base with contingent staff that kind of come in, do a particular thing and then leave again. So those bring their own challenges. So you've got joiners, movers, leavers, processes that need to be really slick to deal with those people as they come into the organization, go out, making sure that their accounts are secure when they're not working for the organization, and when they are, that then they're not open to breach and they're not using devices that could bring issues into the organization. So hopefully some of those have rung true with you, and they are absolutely challenges that you have too. Come on, slides. There we go. And I think just again, generally what we've seen, and I'll try to get through this one quickly, but what we generally have seen is over the years, certainly since I've been in IT, when I first started, everything was very much you build it in your own data center, or you kind of have your own building, and then you put your own network and your own servers in your own data center, and then maybe that expanded into multiple data centers. If you were able to, and multiple sites as well. So then they got connected over things like firewalls and wide area networks, and then you brought in mobile devices. So this is now starting to build. So it's now mobile devices connecting back into your on-premises environment. That then changed, and obviously things like Office 365 and software as a service started to become more prevalent. So you've obviously got things like Office 365, but things like Dropbox, Google, Salesforce. All these services now are available for you to just purchase, and sometimes they're also just purchased outside of IT or without IT's knowledge. So you just get people start using these systems. So that's now gone from having a nice kind of, I've thrown my arms around it, it's nice and protected, it's what they used to call a walled garden sort of approach. I know all about everything that I own in terms of IT. Oh, now actually someone's just gone and started buying software as a service. So now we've got data in these services. So how do I look after those? Take that a step further. You've then got, rather than corporately owned devices, you've now got sort of bring your own devices. And how do you now look after those? So people are wanting different types of device, and they want to connect their own personal device to work so that they can, be continually available or always responding to clients and customers. And how do you deal with that? You then got now things like Internet of Things. So devices, smart and intelligent devices that are now collecting data and feeding that data back into your organization to give you even more data. And then, now you've got things like infrastructure as a service and cloud-based services. So you're hosting these data center services outside of that using cloud technology. So as I say, these are things and trends that have continued to develop and grow, and clearly it won't stop here as well. It'll continue to move on. So there's a challenge there in terms of keeping up to date with that. So getting into the meat of it, how do we build that, and what kind of services have we got available? Certainly from a Microsoft perspective, as I say, we know that there are other products out there, of course, but our speciality is the Microsoft set. So how would you, what's the best way? What's a good strategy to sort of start with? And I think both us at Risual and certainly from a Microsoft perspective, and hopefully you've heard of this before, but zero trust is absolutely something that we would stand behind as a strategy, as a sort of methodology that's really going to help you to secure your organization. And again, there's not sort of a one way to do this. It's developed as a standard or as a strategy so that you can, take of it what works for you and implement the areas that are most attributed to you. But it's about, really, as it says at the bottom, really, it's about increasing security, but also increasing your productivity at the same time. So I think traditionally it's always been, oh, we've got to lock it down, we've got to stop people doing things, and that's how we'll get our security. Actually, these days it's very much a mindset that's changed, and this zero trust has really helped to drive that by going, no, actually, the end users need to continue to be productive and even more productive, and allow that sort of sharing of data with trusted sources, but doing it in a way that still means we can recall that data, or that we know where that data is, so that if there is a breach, we can let somebody know that actually there's issues here. So you need to help us, or we need to recover that data back. So in terms of a strategy, we've got a couple of pillars. So we've got user access, we've got modern security operations, and then we've got operational threats and data security and how we deal with those as well. So we'll just delve into a little bit around zero trust. As I say, it's been around a while. It was developed back in sort of 2004 with a Jericho forum based, a global forum that was set up. And it kind of went through, and I think it wasn't until 2010 that Forrester actually, there's a person there that developed a white paper on some of the work that had been going on in the Jericho forum, and they coined the term zero trust. And I think from that point on, it's kind of stuck, and people have kind of cottoned on to that, those theories. We've also got things like the National Cyber Centre now in the UK that's obviously been around a few years, but back in 2019 they published a sort of white paper on how to implement the standards that the UK National Cyber Centre would recommend, and how to think about zero trust and how you should look at those standards as well. So again, this continues to develop and continues to grow, but what I suppose I'm trying to highlight is that this is a strategy or that's been around for a while. It's not something that's kind of come up in the last couple of years, even though you may have only heard about it in the last couple of years. So in terms of the principles, these are sort of principles that have been defined by the Open Group, who have obviously helped it with some of the establishment of zero trust. Obviously I won't read all of them out. You can see them down the left hand side. The ones I would want to just really call out is three, for me anyways, three main ones, which is validate the trust explicitly. So what we're saying there is you've got to verify whenever a user or an application wants to access data, verify all the time. So when they're accessing data, not just as part of a log-on session and then you trust it forevermore, actually validate each time that person or that application or that thing is trying to access the data, every single time they try to access it. So do that validation and do that check and balance. We've then got things like principle of least privilege. So if you think about giving people just in time access or just enough access to access the data that they need. Now, you might think that kind of goes back to, well, it stops people being productive. Well, no, it doesn't. It just means that they need to prove that they need access at the time that they need access to it. And then when they don't need access, so when they're asleep, then you can remove that access. And that removes some of those attack vectors from some data just being open and available all the time. It just means that somebody, if there was an attacker or an actor, I think they tend to be called these days, is then trying to break in and access that data, that it's not going to happen at 3 o'clock in the morning when somebody's asleep, because you can remove the access at that time because it's just not needed. So we can do that as well by applying that principle of least privilege. And then the final one is improve continuously. So what we should always be doing is assuming that there is breach in the environment and assuming that there is a breach to your data. segmenting networks, segmenting users, devices, both whether they're corporate devices or privately owned devices, potentially even segmenting the applications away, which we can start to do even more of that now, and I'll come on to some of that in a bit as well. Encryption for all the sessions. So again, if you think about previously when it was all been on premise, you could argue that it was trusted and therefore we didn't need to encrypt. Well, lots of this stuff is happening over the internet now, and again, especially with people working from home. And I know we've got things like VPNs with virtual private networks, but I think actually, even those are starting to move away because they could be classed as being restrictive. By connecting people over the internet and encrypting the sessions that they're doing, they can still essentially connect from anywhere, and especially with 3G, 4G, and even 5G, availability through most of the UK and globally these days is always improving. People on the move, people on the go will need to continue to have access to that data. So making sure we can improve that access and improve the threat detection and improve encryption all the time is absolutely a stable for the principles. So in terms of thinking about how we can do some of this challenging and how some of the technology works. So if you're thinking about always verify in particular, so the first one in that list, you can think about signals. So when a device connects or a user connects, there's always going to be a signal that is created. So, I need to access this piece of data, and then what we can gather is that as part of that information access request, if you think about it like that as a signal, then we can capture things like the device's situation. So, if the device is under management and we know about it, that could be a tick in the box to say that's fine. Or if the device isn't under management and we don't know about it, then we can collect that information and then do some analysis on that to say, right, well, in that case, is it a certain threat or not? Has it got the most recent patches on? Has it got antivirus that's associated to it? And we can check all of those signals. And actually very, very quickly, of course, we can check all of those signals as that information request comes through. Then we've got things like user risk. So where is the user kind of coming from? What's the location? Obviously over the internet maybe. So where is that person physically connecting from? And we can track most of that these days as well through things like obviously the IP addresses and the location and geolocation. But we can also look at things like behavior. So when did the person last try to access the data? Is it a common trend that we can see that they're accessing it at roughly the same time again? In which case it's more likely to be them rather than, okay, they last accessed it at 9:30 this morning, and now they're accessing it again at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, well, that's unlikely. So that might not be them. So we're going to challenge them further now. So because we don't think it's you, and looking at the previous behavior, we're going to challenge that even further. And that's where it then moves into that decision-making process and the sort of decision engine, if you like, that says, well, we'll take all those signals, we'll take all that information, and we'll make decisions really quickly to decide, are we okay with the request that's coming through, or do we need to add more enforcement to that, which again leads to the right-hand side. So do we need to challenge further? Do we need to ask for more information? Do we need to prove more elements of the signal to be okay with the fact that request can be handled and approved? So I'll take a deep breath and a quick drink because this is a big slide. How do we do some of this with the Microsoft technology? So as you can imagine, Microsoft have got products for most of the things that I'm talking about, of course, and they've released a cyber reference architecture, which if you can see the link on the slide there, aka.ms/MCRA, I would very much urge you to take a look at that, and then you can kind of take this cyber reference architecture, of which there's also other architectures as part of the set as well, but I'd very much urge you to take a look at this. And essentially what this is going to do is this slide builds through and highlights to you the different products and technology that can help you at each of the different stages. So it's really kind of almost kind of putting a product to a situation. Excuse me. So obviously we start with maybe a data center, and you've got your intranet and your extranet. So then how do we build onto that? So you're going to have devices that will connect into that data center and to those services. And how do we manage those endpoints and how do we manage those devices? You've got things like Endpoint Manager, and you've got Unified Endpoint Manager, or which is available to you, which is Configuration Manager, sort of on premises, if you like, and then you've got Intune, which is the cloud-based variant. You've clearly got things like Windows 10 and Windows 11 as the operating systems. Hopefully you're up to date with those. And you've got methods either through Endpoint Manager or maybe other methods to keep those up to date, patched and controlled. And of course, those operating systems have always had, well, they have been built from the ground up to have security factored into that. And there's lots of, the amount of times that I see customers and clients that have got third-party products that they've bolted on top of an operating system to be more secure. And actually, you know, the Microsoft stack and the Microsoft solutions are, I think, just as good, if not better. And they're paid for as part of the license for Windows 10 most of the time as well. So I think I very much urge you to kind of refocus and have a look at that, just to see again, you know, you're paying for Windows 10, you're paying for Windows 11. Actually, what do you get as part of that? And if you then add on things like the Microsoft 365 licenses, then you've got even more facilities that will allow you to help and to manage those. From an identity and access perspective, you've clearly got Active Directory, which will help to manage those identities. You then start thinking about, okay, well, let's look at software as a service. Clearly, we know Microsoft have got Office 365 as a software as a service. But if we then introduce Azure Active Directory, by linking our on-premises Active Directory to Azure Active Directory, we can then use facilities and services that are part of the Microsoft Azure AD. So you've got things like passwordless, things like Hello for Business, Authenticator, things like multi-factor authentication, that are all services that are now part of Active Directory that you can tap into. And they can be then used when you're accessing those cloud-based services. There are even some services that you can then, when you're connecting back to on-premises, there is conditional access and multi-factor authentication services that you can even deploy when you're accessing on-premises applications. But it works brilliantly, obviously, when you're accessing cloud-based services. You've also got things like identity governance, Azure AD privileged identity management as well, which is the Azure AD PIM, which is going to control things like administrator access. So, yeah, clearly we're thinking quite heavily about end user access, but what about your administrators? Because that's also a point of attack as well. Somebody can find out somebody's administrator password, then that's absolutely going to be the sort of the golden key, if you like, that's going to open up a lot of doors. So by using things like privileged identity management, you can really help to reduce that attack vector by auditing and controlling those administrative permissions. Continuing to build on. So again, if we wanted to, for example, allow either third-party access through to your on-premise systems, or even your end users that might not have a corporately owned device, through things like conditional access and Azure AD. If you didn't see it, this little button, this little box got built, which is Azure AD Proxy. So this is a facility to access on-premises services, but still using things like conditional access services that's provided by Azure AD. So you've still got all that control mechanisms there. You then build out that traditional on-premises infrastructure, and you think and start to introduce a hybrid cloud, so third-party infrastructure or platform as a service, whether that's Azure or AWS or the Google cloud platforms. It doesn't matter. We can potentially look at those. You've got things like ExpressRoute and private links that will link into those services, and continue to build. There we go. That's what I was waiting for. So you've then got things like Defender for Cloud. So if you think about Defender for Windows 10, which has been around for quite a while, Defender for Cloud kind of builds on top of that and is a sort of an antivirus and anti-malware solution that will go across cloud services, and that can be both on-prem in other people's clouds, so not just Microsoft's clouds, and we can have, where was I going with that? So we've got things like Secure Score as well that can review the compliance, again, across those boundaries as well. So we can really start to look across the stack. And we can use facilities like Azure Arc and Azure Lighthouse to help us with that. So again, connecting across AWS, cloud, other third-party services as well. So I won't list them out, but we can connect across all of those and gather information and signals again from those areas too. Building out again, we can also use Defender for Cloud to protect our IoT solutions as well and systems. So we've also got Defender for IoT that can have a look, we can use that to protect the signals that are coming from our intelligent devices and again back into our platforms. Covering this or having a look at that across the top and being able, I think lots of people refer to it as a single pane of glass. So where do you go to have a look at the security posture and what's going on in my environment? So Microsoft have got a product called Microsoft Sentinel that can absolutely help with that, where it receives all the signals. It's coming through. So it receives signals from all of the endpoints. So whether that's, again, on-premises infrastructure, networking equipment, identity services, software as a service services, again, from third-party clouds, not just Microsoft, they can all be received in to Microsoft Sentinel, analyzed, and then reported on and give you notifications as the IT team as to, are we under attack or is there some different behavior that's happening that we need to be aware of? Are there potentially open areas that we need to lock down? And again, Sentinel will help you to review all of those. We've then got things like information protection as well, which is becoming a very, very popular piece of consultancy for us at Risual. So clearly that means that the customers are tapping into this now. But you've got things like Azure Information Protection, or it's kind of recently been changed to Office Labels. And then you've got which is really helping you with Office 365 and to protect the documentation that has been created and stored in things like Office 365. And then when you're emailing it out to your partners or sharing that data with your partners, making sure that the data is still protected by being digitally tagged. And then you've got Azure PureView, which kind of does the same thing, but rather than from an Office data perspective, it can tag and look at data that is maybe kept on other services, so things like file shares, things that aren't necessarily a Word document, for example. So data that is created, SQL databases or databases in general. PureView can actually help to analyze that data and tag that data as well, so it remains secure, or rather than remaining secure, where it is, so you can apply that data governance and you can report on where that data is. So if you've got things like GDPR requests, for example, where that data is and you can recover it, and if you need to, report on it really, really quickly. As I say, you've got things like compliance score as well, which is not just for Azure, but also goes across the piece in Office 365. So you can use Secure Score to look at your security posture, to see what recommendations are there, both from a Microsoft perspective, but also they feed in from the compliancy standards. So if you've got ISO standards or UK credit card standards, for argument's sake, you can apply those filters and you can see, right, how compliant are you with those, and where should you focus your attention to make sure that if you're not quite compliant yet, where should you focus your attention to build up that compliancy as well, I think. Yeah, so you've then got a final one on here as well, is around things like people security. You've got services that are available to you from Microsoft as well, like Attack Simulator and Insider Risk Management and Communication Compliance. So you've got facilities to pretend and really check your environment to, you've got the secure score that will report on the posture, but actually to create like a penetration attack, penetration test, for example. You can use the Attack Simulator to do that. And also, if you've got things like different parts of your organization, so maybe if you're a global organization and you've got different areas of requirements or compliance in different countries, for example, or you've got, for argument's sake, you've got a research and development area which is really containing sensitive data, and then you've got other areas of your organization that you might not want you still want to all be part of the same organization and all part of the same infrastructure, but you need that separation between the two. So you can do some of that with things like insider risk management, and again, you can report on what's going on there and who's communicating with you, and potentially block some of that if it's not warranted. So like I say, very busy slide there. That's very much something I'd urge you, like I say, go onto that website and take a look at that. And of course, as you can imagine, with each of these, there's links as you hover over some of these products. There are links that goes off to the documentation that tells you a lot more in depth about what certain areas will do as well. Looking at a slightly simple, more simple form of that, we've got, again, if we think about, those three main points in the zero trust that I touched on before. So verify explicitly, think about least privileged or implement least privileged access, and assume that you've always got breach. So there's Microsoft products in particular, clearly, that will help with those. So you've got Azure AD and Microsoft Defender for Identity. That's always going to help you with the verification and helping you with the least privilege as well. You've got Defender for your endpoints and Defender Endpoint Manager. That's clearly going to help you again with your verifying explicitly. So we can make sure that your end devices that you manage are always up to date, and we can report on that. And we've got things like conditional access, which again is part of Azure AD, that even if you don't own the device, we can still do a number of checks to make sure to say, well, okay, we don't own that device. We know it's an Android device, but what version of Android is it? And therefore, is it one that we are happy to allow our data to be looked at and shared on? Or, okay, maybe if it's not a version that we're happy with it to be stored on, we'll allow the data to be viewed, but as soon as the person finishes that session or closes the browser, then that data again gets removed from that device, so it's not stored there. Again, you can do things like that with the conditional access that's part of Azure AD. You've got the Defender for Cloud on the right-hand side, information protection, and Defender for Cloud Apps as well. So actually, that's one I didn't touch on too much. So if you think about Defender for Cloud Apps, is what they kind of class as a security broker. So it's a bit like a proxy server that, again, will sit in between your data and your infrastructure and cloud services that you invoked. And again, as your users attempt to access that data, or your applications attempt to access the data, the Defender for Cloud Apps will sit in between that, and again do that security brokerage and report on that, and challenge where needed as well. So you can train it to do some of the challenging over and above the conditional access, and actually the two work together to give you even more capabilities as well. So again, that's something I'd very much urge you to take a look at. And then again, if you think about how do we report on all of this all up and see it all as a single pane of glass, that's where you've got your Microsoft Sentinel to really help you to review what's going on, how is it going on, why is it going on, what's happened previously, and maybe even do some predictions and some what they call hunting as well, to say, okay, based on what we've seen in the past, this is what we're predicting might happen in the future too. So you can do that with the Sentinel tools will allow you to do that. We've got the threat intelligence. So as you can imagine, with the Microsoft Cloud these days, they're receiving billions and trillions of signals every day as more and more of their services are used by clients like yourselves. So clearly they're building up building lots of information about what's going on. So, by using their services to help take some of the pain away, if you like, by using the automated intelligence that they've invested, not just millions, but billions of pounds in developing, why wouldn't you use those services? So absolutely, by doing that and using the cloud-based tools, we can really start to predict and work out by bringing all of our data into something like Sentinel and those telemetry services. We can really start to use the analytical tools that are available to us. And again, it's not necessarily all part, because as I said at the beginning, really with this, with cybersecurity, it's not necessarily all about trying to plug all of the holes in your environment to stop an attack from happening. Sometimes, because of the attack is going to change, it's about how quickly you can react to a breach taking place. So in order to do that, you've got to obviously have a solution in place that will notify you quickly when something it thinks is going wrong, and then maybe even give you guidance on what the action could be to rectify that, or to shut it down, to disable the user, if you like, that's been attacked. It will give you, or it can give you guidance on that. So again, with cybersecurity, I don't think it's something that, as I say, because it's always changing, you're going to necessarily be able to stop completely. It's always going to change, and it's about how you can react to that quickly to reduce the attack down, and to protect your reputation. So again, if you think about cyber resiliency, so the things I've been talking about today, yes, there's a mindset shift. That's absolutely something that your organization is going to need to help you with. So, you know, I guess one of the jobs that you may have, depending on your role, as you're listening to this, is taking some of the information back to your board and to your trustees and saying, look, I need, this is something that isn't going away. We do need to think about how we protect our data, protect our reputation, and join me with that. And I'll educate you on what needs to be done. I'll educate you on what the threats need to be, but I need you to change your mindset to be more, okay, I'll spend something and it's done, it's dealt with, it. We don't need to worry about it again. No, this is something that's going to have to be continually thought about and continually invested in. Obviously, use of cloud technologies. So services that Microsoft and other cloud vendors, of course, are building. They're building security into their products, otherwise they wouldn't be going to market. It's as simple as that. So, tap into the investments that they're making and make the most use of those. And then obviously think about hygiene. So review the IT strategy, look at sort of well-known and previously identified risks. Maybe there's some things that I've mentioned today that have rung true with you as well. And you think, oh yeah, I didn't think about that previously. Well, they are absolutely known risks, and because they're known risks, we also have ways that we can help to deal with them. So again, if you think about sort of this mindset shift, previously we always used to think about, well, we've got to design a solution that never fails. It's always got to be up and running 100% of the time. Well, in reality, that's not quite how it pans out, right? So there's always generally, even at 99.39s, there's still an element of downtime. So actually, rather than thinking about trying to make it always up and always available and always secure, well, what about how if we designed it to recover quickly? So maybe spreading some of the workload around, again, using cloud services and some of the services that are there to help with that is maybe a better way to do it. So rather than keeping it up all the time, what about how quickly we can respond to it? Again, rather than trying to prevent a possible attack, what about if we just assume that we are always being attacked, and that we should put things in place to block and to check and to verify every single time, rather than just so, oh yeah, we spent £3 million securing our environment and nobody's ever going to get in. We've built the walls high enough so nobody can get over the top of them. Well, actually, I don't think that's ever going to be the case. So let's assume that we've always got somebody that's tunneling underneath the walls and trying a different method. Again, I've kind of gone on about this, but the advantages of the cloud era, absolutely, I'd very much promote the fact of using those services that are being invested in. And this is a little slide that tries to go, right, well, on the left, if I just go back one, actually. So the theory is here, what you've got is where you've got all the little boxes. These are responsibilities that you need to deal with. So every box is an individual responsibility, right? The orange boxes are ones that you've already satisfied and you've got a solution or something in place to deal with it. The blue boxes are the filled in blue boxes are ones that you've partially met. So you've got something ready and you think you've got a process for it and you can deal with it if and when it happens. So that's fine. The ones that are sort of obviously boxes but haven't been coloured in, those are ones that you just don't know how to deal with, or you haven't met the responsibility, so you don't know how to deal with it. What we've got here is on the left-hand side is that traditional approach. You move to the cloud, and what you can tend to find is that actually by doing that, you can start to consolidate, and you can give the cloud provider, assuming you pick the right ones, of course, some of that responsibility, or they take over some of the responsibilities that you haven't been able to meet previously. So by using a service that is already accredited to certain levels, you're inheriting some of that security and some of those security services that have been provided. So those are the grey boxes now that have been filled in. So now the area that you need to then think about and focus on is reduced, right? Take that even further by levering other cloud capabilities from other services, and again you start to fill in even more boxes there. So again, by joining clouds together and having services like Sentinel that can have a look across multiple environments, you can really then, as I say, start to narrow the those responsibility. You can narrow that down and really focus in on the ones that you can have got the skills and the capability to really deal with, and let the cloud vendors deal with the others. Slide. Move. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. There we go. Okay, so in terms of, obviously I've gone on quite a lot there about zero trust and how to implement it. So here's a bit of a rapid mobilization plan, again, provided by Microsoft, so thank you to them. So again, top priority, think about user access. This is, in inverted commas, is a quick win by, again, using things like Azure AD, conditional access, Azure MFA, passwordless technologies with things like Windows 10 and Windows 11. So, Windows Hello and things like that. There's absolutely very quick gains that you can get from that but still allowing productivity. Then you can think about modernizing security operations. So how can you then introduce, by looking at all of these signals, how can you then introduce a team of people, or have you got a team of people that are really thinking about security within your organization? So have you got somebody dedicated to it, rather than somebody, it's a part-time job for somebody, or it's something we do every now and again when we have a review. Actually thinking about modernizing that and making it the primary focus of your IT department is clearly a good thing, but that will take time to implement. And then you think about, as needed, if you're moving some of these services to the cloud, things like operational technology, things like your own data centers, modernizing of those, making sure you're on the latest operating systems, of course, making sure that your applications are the latest versions and supported versions, all of that is clearly going to help, but as part of a wider plan, of course. So in terms of, some recommendations, we would say make a plan, review it, use things that, if you've got Office 365, which we know that probably majority of you will have some elements of that, have a look at things like Secure Score. Again, if you've got Azure, take a look at Secure Score as well. Do a bit of a security review yourselves. So, Secure Score will help with that. And there are services that we can provide, which I'll come on to in a second, around the security review. Make a plan with a priority list. So going back to the rapid adoption that I've just gone through, give yourself a list of 10 things, but prioritize them and tick them off virtually tick them off as you go through. And set yourself the challenge to get through them, but always do that constant review of what's happening as well as you go. I know I'm at the top of the hour. I will stay. If you have got any questions, please start to ask them now. I'll keep going. If you guys need to drop off, then that's fine. I realise I'm coming to time, but as I say, this recording will be available to you later as well anyway, so you can always listen back to these last few points that I'm going to make. But in terms of how can risual help, so obviously we, as a Microsoft partner, we've got a go-to-market sort of proposition. This that we've got on here is a client security journey. So we've got dedicated specialists, security specialists. We've got a managed services team in the sort of right-hand side around managed security. So we could even take some of these problems away for you and deal with them and look after them for you with things like our security operations center. So we could even provide you, a solution to look after that SOC for you, or develop that modern security environment for you. But again, if you start on the left-hand side, we've got things like strategies. We can have a look at kind of what you're doing. We've got an assessment, which we can do as well, which I'll come on to again in a second. And then we've got things where we can design those services and implement those services with you from the Microsoft stack, absolutely, as well. So each one of these boxes is essentially an engagement that you could work with us on. As I touched on, we got kind of 2 assessments, and I think one of the call to actions that I had was think about doing a security review and a security assessment. So we've got 2 different flavors. One is a cybersecurity assessment, and this is more of an all-up view of your security posture in your organization. So we based it on the National Cyber Centre guidance, which they've released again, would very much urge you to take a look at it. 10 steps to cybersecurity as a guidance document. So it's on the website. I'd say go to the NCSC, do a search for 10 steps to cybersecurity, have a look at the things that they talk about and cover there. Well, we will come in. I mean, there's no there's no compliancy, if you like, so we can't audit you and then give you a rubber stamp at the end to say yes, you're now accredited to those 10 steps. It's not that kind of a facility, but we can absolutely go through it with you and highlight to you the areas of security concern that you may have, or that we believe you've got. And as I say, it kind of covers all these areas here. So things like risk management, engagement and training, asset management, architecture and configuration, vulnerability management, identity and access management, data security, logging and monitoring, incident management, and supply chain security. So we kind of cover all of that with you, and then give you a report at the end to give you our summary on where you're at with each of those areas. So that's the cybersecurity. We also have a cloud security review or a cloud security assessment. Now, this is very much focused on those customers who have already got a Microsoft, either Microsoft 365, Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics implementation. So if you've already got those facilities, if you've already got those services, then this assessment will essentially come in. It's a lot shorter engagement. This one's only sort of 3 or 4 days. And we'll come in and have a look at those environments that you've already got set up, and then give you an assessment as to, using things like Secure Score, as to how secure those environments are, and highlight to you areas of concern that we've got, and highlight to you, again, if you've got compliancy requirements that you want to achieve, how you can achieve them by reconfiguring or turning additional services on that you may have licensed already. So again, I'll just finish off with a call to action. So, you've got to gain buy-in from your leadership boards. You've got to build security awareness across your team and across your organization. Again, we could help you with that if you're struggling with that. And of course, we've got connections with Microsoft as well that will help you to do that too. Document what your security policies should be and what they need to be. And then again, somebody like ourselves can come in and review that with you and assess that with you to say, right, okay, what services and what features and products can actually help you to achieve those policies and achieve those goals. Choose technology that is designed for a way to people to work. So again, I talked about this at the beginning. We're not trying to implement cybersecurity to block productivity or to block stuff. It actually needs to be the other way around. It needs to enable productivity, but doing it in a way that is secure and that is traceable and that is governed, so that if there is any issues, then we can obviously recover them and recover the data. And clearly review Microsoft's recommendations, but don't, there are other recommendations out there, of course. So get yourself a wide view, get yourself, do lots of reading, join sessions like this where it's talking about different areas and different technologies, and then come up with a strategy that fits you and your organization. I very much urge you as well. So there is actually a really good white paper on strengthening cyber defenses for non-for-profits, which is available from Microsoft. So if you do a search for that with your favorite search provider, then yeah, I think you have to register with Microsoft to get that. But I'd very much recommend you take a look at that white paper. And of course, if you're not sure or you can't find it, then get in touch with us and we can steer you towards that, and we can probably share that with you and guide you through that as well. And to finish off, I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. So again, questions will be available in a second. I'll give a few minutes for that. So please post them now if you've got them. And while you're typing up your questions, just to say we have got an offer as some free consultancy. So if you are interested in learning more about risual, learning more about the Microsoft stack as to how that can help you, looking at maybe what your environment currently is and your licenses that you currently got and maybe the elements that you're not using, we're offering a free consultancy session. So again, it's free. So get yourself registered. There's a URL down the bottom there, risu.al/free workshop. Get yourself onto that website, put your details into that, and we will then contact you to arrange that free consultancy session. Of course, if you've been interested in anything that I've spoken about today and I haven't sent you all to sleep, then please, if you've got any further questions, feel free to ask them now, or get in touch with us either through the telephone number, through the website, email address. If you're an existing customer of ours, please do contact your account manager. You can contact us through Twitter and Facebook as well. We've got areas there where you can contact us as well. So as most organizations do these days, we've got multiple ways to get in touch. So please do. And I think that that draws us to a close for the webinar itself. I'll give it till say 10 past. If anybody has got any questions, please do feel free to post them. Will, if you've seen any questions come through, then please post them up. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining. Hopefully that's been really enjoyable for you, and you've learned something from today. Just looking through, I think there's only the one that's been asked so far, which was, will the recording be shared? Which obviously we've answered, it will be shared, so that's fine. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any questions coming through, so that's fine, no problem. We'll close the webinar there. And like I say, if you've got any questions, please do feel free to, I'll just put it, whoops. Just put that last slide back up. So if you do want to contact us, those are our contact details. And again, if you did want that free workshop, please do go to that risu.al/free workshop. Many thanks.